Hey guys, insight number 2. So we're in chapter 8, verses 1 through 11. Now this is a story that you're probably going to be familiar with. This is the woman caught in adultery that is hauled before Christ. Now, to give some context in here, Pharisees and the Scribes were so angry at Christ for changing the way they were running things. So even though they were under Roman rule, the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Scribes, they had like a governmental system under that they were the ones that got to go to the schools, and they decided who got this, and they were sort of running things and oppressing a lot of people to make them feel better, judging a lot of people, and that's sort of where they'd gotten into in their headspace. So for them, this was a mighty change that they did not want, because this would mean a complete change of their lifestyle, that there'd be no more slaves to come help them, and because Jesus is going out there teaching to everybody repentance and be kind and be loving and love thy neighbor. And these guys are like, yeah, but only the neighbors we want to love, and only on these days, and only if they don't eat this food, and that one committed a crime, so they're no part of our family anymore. Like, it was really quite divisive behavior, and we see that today. Thus the reason for some of the recent conference talks around letting those things go. Thank you, President Nelson, this specifically. That's how they were living, and that's snuck back in now. It's all about, it's not that it was selfish, it's just self-involved, self-centered, self-focused is probably the best way to put it, and that's how they were living. It was about them, not everybody else. So they didn't want Christ around. They were trying hard to get rid of him, and they eventually did. Christ knew this was going to happen, but here he warns them about a great thing. And this is a good interaction to see how Christ behaves versus how the Pharisees behave. So Jesus goes to the Mount of Olives. This is in verse 1 of chapter 8. And he comes out to the temple and he starts teaching to all the people that were sat there. And of course, people are gathering to hear him all the time now. They want to hear these things. So the scribes and Pharisees in verse 3 brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. So literally caught in the act, grabbed her. Didn't care about the guy, right? He's just as freaking guilty, but no, apparently, no, just the woman. Maybe he ran. Maybe he got away and ran and she couldn't do that. I don't know. We don't know that situation. And, there's so much more in there, and we often talk about this woman. But let's look at some of the other characters in this. Although the woman, yes, very important, and the grace and mercy given to her, huge. But let's look at the interaction here. So they literally drag her and throw her at Christ's feet while he's teaching and a group of people. I mean, for one thing, way to interrupt a spiritual moment, guys. But they said unto him, Master, we've got you now, sort of thing. This woman was taken in adultery in the very act. And now in Moses' law, that would command us that she should be stoned. But what do you say? Come on, you're going to say something different. We know you are, because you've just been teaching us that the law of Moses is for that time, and now I'm giving you a higher law. And people around here are really loving that, but we're going to catch you on this one. So this, they said, tempting him. They were wanting him to, fall into a trap here. These guys really didn't know who he was, because this is not going to work, right? So they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down, and with his finger, this is verse 6, he wrote on the ground as though he heard them not. He just ignored the whole thing, just kept really calm. Here's this big, you can imagine it happening in a sacrament meeting today where someone's hauled in like that. And the bishop's just like, okay, so the next song will be, it's really calm, right? So just if he heard them not. And then in verse 7, so when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them, he that is without sin among you, let him cast a stone at her. Let him first cast a stone at her. And now we know that so well. And what did these guys do? They were all like, oh, yeah. Oops, he's got us. Then he stooped down again and he continued writing on the ground. What was he writing on the ground? I want to know that. Right? What was he drawing? Was he actually writing scriptures? Or is he just like, Jesus was here? Like, like what? I want to know, right? Anyway, and 9. And they which heard it, being convicted of their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, even unto the last, and Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst of the people. So they were just there, like, they're all just like, oh, actually all of us have sin, and we know it. They were caught in their own guilt, so they left. So when Jesus had lifted himself up and saw no one but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? And she said, No man, no man's condemned me. Because they were going to, but they themselves were guilty of things too. She calls him Lord, so she must have had some idea of who he was. And Jesus said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. So there's that mercy that comes in. And then Jesus turns, this is paragraph break. So this could have been later in the day, it could have been the next day, but John just keeps writing this. Now Jesus spoke unto again the people, and he teaches them again about being wrongfully judgmental. He teaches to them about that he is Jewish, that he is this promised Messiah. And they're still saying, Who are you? Who are you? So yeah, go and look at verses 25 through 27 as well, because that's about spiritual blindness, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more next in the next insight. But basically more around John 10, we're going to look at that. But it's starting to sort of wind up here. They're still having this spiritual blindness and can't see. But this is really indicative of mercy to all. So this account of the woman caught in adultery really highlights several things, and I've got 3 listed here that I sort of brought out of this. So the Scribes and Pharisees were in open opposition to Christ. At this point, they were out to get him. They were being contentious and confrontational and really just doing anything they could to make an ugly situation. 2, they were going to extreme lengths, as I said just then, to silence him. Anything to just get him to shut up, right? And it's not working because you don't get to tell Christ when to be quiet. You can try. You can try all you want, but it's not going to work. And 3, Christ cannot be out-talked. He cannot be out-talked, outwitted, or outplayed. He is the ultimate survivor if you're a fan of that show. He cannot be out-talked, outwitted, or outplayed. And he will always meet you where you are with endless mercy, which is what this woman found. Now, as I said, we often talk about this woman and don't ever discount the beauty of that. I just wanted to take it from an angle of how contentious these Pharisees were being and how it was still not working for them, and it keeps building within them, which is ultimately the downfall of Christ. But Christ kind of knew this, and he's still just trying to teach them, and he's being kind to them. He didn't yell at them and tell them to get out of there or anything. He's completely calm, and he's just like, actually, any of you here that are sinless, go ahead. So he doesn't even argue with them. It's just a really good interaction there between those like Jesus and the Pharisee group to show his mercy even for them. Yeah. Okay. Now, Shakespeare said this, and I know it's not a gospel thing, but it really speaks to this point of mercy, because mercy can be given whether you're Christian or not. Mercy is a Buddhist thing. Mercy is a Hindu thing. Mercy is Jewish. Mercy is through all religions. There's some form, sometimes not complete, and sometimes a lot of it missing, sometimes a little misconstrued, but there's always an aspect of mercy. So, he says, this is Shakespeare, the quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. And that's what's so special about mercy. It's not only just those who give it, it's those who get it are really blessed by it. So that's really, really cool. Yeah, awesome stuff on this about the Come Follow Me manual this week. Really look at it on this one. It has some really good information there, especially from Elder Renland. There's a good quote, so have a look at that. But yeah, think about that. Think about that interaction and where it's ultimately going to lead. And actually not giving mercy, both parties suffer. Ours especially. It came with not forgiveness. It comes in that same category. Both parties suffer, but us more. So think on that. All right. hang around. We're going to go over to chapter 9. Have a look what happens there. See you then.